welcome to another painting video. In this video, I'll be painting a unit of Chaos Warriors. These are staples of Warhammer and have been in my peripheral since I started the hobby. Especially the new sculpts look so menacing and awesome. Nurgle will think this is heresy, but there is a new edition coming for Age of Sigmar, and that means I want to start a new army. So I'll be walking the eightfold path, starting with these warriors. Let's paint them up. As you've seen in the intro, I'm going for something different when it comes to the main armor. I spray the army with Nightlord's Blue for efficiency, but you can also do the entire recipe with a brush. Next, I'm going to layer on the highlights, starting with Incubi Darkness. I don't cover the entire armor, but see where either the light will hit or where there are big armor panels that need some texture. I feather on Stegadon Scale Green to further enhance the previous layer. As always, I try to make the following layers smaller. The next highlight is Thunderhawk Blue. This is a lot brighter than the previous step. If it's too jarring, you can also add an additional step of Dark Reaper to bridge these two colors. Fenrisian Grey is the final highlight and is used sparingly. I mostly focus on edge highlighting. With a slightly watered down Scrag Brown, I add some rust spots on the armor. Not too many, I'm not painting a Maggotkin model here. Just add some interesting spots on the armor. My Chaos Warriors are walking in the frozen waste, so I think this cold blue armor will work very well with the snowy bases than dark metal. I also think this looks a little bit more interesting in my opinion. I also like to feather on the highlights so it gives a little bit of a rough texture on the armor. To offset the blue armor, I am going to add some rich brown leather to the model. I base coat everything I want leather with Rhinox Hide. And layer on Doombull Brown. When I layer, I focus on raised areas and see where the light would hit that particular surface. I build up the previous layer with Scrag Brown, which further enhances the highlight on the leather. You can also use this step to make some scratches and battle damage to the leather. The final highlight is Xantry Dust. The leather looks really good with the dark blue armor. A more blackish leather could also work, but I think this looks a little bit more interesting. Let's add some more colors to complement the blue armor. Some warriors have tabards, which I base coat with Corn Red. I also paint a couple of the cloaks the same way. The raised areas are painted with Sanguine Scarlet from Too Thin Coats, and highlighted with Demon Red, also from Too Thin Coats. Highlighting red is always tricky, as it turns either orange or pink really fast. What I've found is that highlighting with Kislev Flesh keeps the red tone nicely. The model is still pretty dark, so the bright red cloth really stands out. It's good to add some fun spot colors to your models. Next, I'm going to paint cloaks, and there's a lot going on here. I painted 5 cloaks red, and the other 5 I base coat with Darkoath Flesh. This paint covers really well, even over a dark base coat. I layer on a mix of Darkoath Flesh and Palace Wish Flesh to highlight. And I add a highlight of Palace Wish Flesh to make the cloak nice and bright. This because I want to add a dark wash. You could add Agrax Earthshade to the cloak, but I'm going with Streaking Grime. I do this on both the white and red cloaks. Just cover the entire surface. The beauty of enamel washes is the ability to remove it using White Spirit. This way it gives you a lot of control on where you want the paint to go. You can play around with sponges or Q-tips and add and remove paint where you want. This gives a really realistic looking dirty cloak if I say so myself. You can probably get the same result with a dark brown wash, but if you haven't done anything with enamel washes yet, I can really recommend you try them out. Let's paint some quick grey fur. The base coat is already there. Let's dry brush Dawnstone carefully on the fur. It's raised quite a bit, so that shouldn't be a problem. Then a dry brush of Celestra Grey. And I end with a dry brush of Ulthen Grey to get a nice bright grey wolf fur. My favorite cloaks are of course the skin covers, which I base coat with Wraithbone. I needed about 2 or 3 coats to get a nice even layer. Then I'm adding 3 skin tone contrast paints for variety. First I use Guilliman Flesh. Then Darkoath Flesh. And also Fyreslayer Flesh. I stipple on a highlight of Kislev Flesh on all the skin tones. And do the same with Flayed One Flesh. Finally, I add a highlight of Deepkin Flesh to give the skin that deadish look. To add some additional shading to the skin, I add a watered down Carroburg Crimson. This looks like some nasty dead skin covers. Especially with the white cloak, it looks really nice. There's another way to paint dead skin, and I will show you this later when I paint the banner. I think these are scales? Anyways, I roughly highlight them with Ironrach skin. Again using the Night Lord's blue as a base. And I repeat the process with Deepkin Flesh. I add some Berserker Bloodshade to random spots. And do the same with Coelia Nightshade. This gives a really gritty looking scales. Maybe it looks a little bit unhinged, I'm not sure, but this is what you get when you just try things out on camera. All metal gets a base coat of Iron Warriors. I like this a lot more than Lead Belcher because it's much darker and it base coats so much better. Brass decorations get a coat of Balthasar Gold. And I shade both the metal and brass with Agrax Earthshade. And I highlight with Runefang Steel. Simple yet effective. Metal and brass on these models are small details, so I try to keep it nice and simple. Let's look at some even smaller details next. Any hair on the model gets a highlight of Hoeth Blue. A highlight of Hoeth Blue mixed with Blue Horror. And a final highlight of Blue Horror. The runestones get a coat of Celestra Grey and a shade of Drakenhof Nightshade. Then a highlight of Celestra Grey mixed with Ulthen Grey. This makes the runestones nice and bright and helps them stand out a little bit more. With a sponge I stipple on dry blood from the army painter on the weapons and on some of the shields, which I assume are also used as weapons. I mean, these warriors fight dirty. With a brush I add True Blood, also from the Army Painter, to the already bloody areas. These two paints work really well together. The eyes inside the helmets I dot with some white paint. And add some Imperial Fist to give them yellow glowing eyes. I want to do something different with horns and make them feel a little bit more richer. I first base coat with Rhinox Hide. I'm going to build up the horns without using a wash. I layer on Mournfang Brown. You can either focus on the entire horn or maybe go for a darker tip or base. Do whatever feels right. I layer on Hobgrot Hide, which introduces the yellow tone and works very well with the underlining brown base coat. I keep layering with Ushabti Bone, which brings it more towards the horn color that we want. And I end with a small highlight of Screaming Skull. Well, this is a bit more work than a base coat, wash and highlight, but I think this is a great practice to build up colors. While painting these horns, it actually got easier and easier as I moved along with the unit. Now let's take a look at the banner and freehand something on it. As you can see, I already base coated the banner with Wraithbone. I first paint the banner with Skeleton Horde. I use a damp brush to move the paint around so I don't get any dark splotches. Next, I shade the banner with Carroburg Crimson to get a filthy looking skin banner. This little trick is courtesy of Darcy Bono. Check out her channel if you haven't done already. Next, I block out the shapes for a Chaos Star on the banner. Use Abaddon Black and not Corvus Black as I used here. I'm going for a Chaos Star that's only half on the banner, but you can also paint a complete one at the top. With Corn Red, I color in the Chaos Star. I try to keep a small outline of the star visible. Corn Red covers pretty well, but I still needed 2 coats to get the red to pop a little bit. Next, I went for some highlights. First, I use Evil Sunz Scarlet. I paint half of the arrows and the tops of the circle between the connection points. I enhance this highlight with Wild Rider Red, again making the highlight smaller than the previous one. With Guilliman Flesh, I dot on some highlights. Let's paint some Frozen Wastes. The base should have a base coat of Nightlord's Blue. Next, I'm going to dry brush Mechanicus Standard Grey on everything. I dry brush on a light grey. I'm using Sky Grey from AK Interactive, but you can also use Administratum Grey. Next, I add Valhallan Blizzard to the base, and to the boots of any miniature that would be on the base. This really is an excellent snow effect. Finally, I paint the rim of the base with Corvus Black. And here we have a unit of fearless Chaos Warriors. I had a lot of fun with these models and tried out some new stuff. Getting some variety in there with the cloaks and painting the armor differently than the standard dark metal. In my next video, I'm going to have a look at the Darkoath Marauders. I actually wanted to do the entire army set in one video, but I think it's way better just to space it out just a little bit. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Instagram, where I'll post pictures of current projects and behind the scenes stuff. But for now, thanks for watching.